Hi guys, welcome back to TheMathTuber, and I'm going to show you how to factor by grouping in this video. So you're going to use factor by grouping when you have 4 terms, but you can also use factor by grouping when you have 3 terms that you're not able to factor easily. But for this video and this purpose, I'm going to actually show it to you when you have 4 terms. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is split the 4 terms into 2 binomials. Second is to factor the GCF of both sides. Third is to write the common binomial as the left-hand side, and then the last and final step is to combine the GCFs for the right binomial. So you're going to have 2 binomials left at the end. So let's go ahead and do an example so you can see what that looks like. All right, so for the first, here's an example, 12a to the third minus 9a squared plus 4a minus 3. So the first thing you want to do is to split the 4 terms into 2 binomials. And I did bring down bring the directions over from the previous page. So you can see these right here in the top right hand corner. They're the same directions. And I'm going to put them on the side here so that you can see each one as we move along. So we just split these two into 2 binomials. So they're separated. This is the left-hand side and this is the right-hand side. And then the second step is to factor the GCF of both sides. And I'm actually going to go over how to find the GCF of a polynomial as well, because that's another difficulty that students have. So you're going to want to factor the GCF of both sides. So the first step is we're going to take the 12a to the third and break it up into the prime factors. So what that means is you're going to find all of the numbers that multiply to be 12 that are not divisible by anything else other than itself and 1. So 2 is a prime number, 3 is a prime number, so those are the prime factors. So 2 times 2 times 3 is 12. And then we're going to take a look at the exponent, so a to the third power, and that means it's a times a times a. So that's how we broke up 12a to the third. And then the next step is to break up 9a squared. So when you break up 9a squared, you get 3 times 3, which is your prime factors of 9. And a squared has 2 a's in them, so it's a times a. And then what you're going to do next is you're actually going to try to make matches. So it's kind of like when you're playing a card game and you try to make matches to make pairs and be able to win the game. So you're going to do the same thing. You're going to make a pair right here. So there's a 3 in the 12a to the third, and there's also a 3 in the 9a squared. And then you're also going to find another a match here that are in both, and then is also another a. So after you find all of the matches, you're going to multiply them back together. So you multiply the matches back together, so that's 3 times a, and that gives you 3a squared. So that is the GCF of the left-hand side, 3a squared. Okay, so now we're done with that one. Now you're going to move on to the right-hand side and find the GCF of this side. So for this example, for a, you're going to break up into the prime factors just like you did for the other side. So that's 2 times 2 times a. And then negative 3, it can either be negative 3 times 1 or negative 1 times 3. And because there are no matches on this right-hand side, you're just going to keep it exactly the way it is. So 4a minus 3 is the lowest factors between the two, so you do not change it. 4a minus 3 is what's left over. Now one could argue that this left-hand side is a negative 9a, and that's going to play a factor when we try to leave what's left over after we pull out the GCF. We're going to make sure we include this negative to be able to find what is left over for 9a squared. So in the next category down below, let me get rid of this little box here. You're going to pull the GCF to the front, and inside the parentheses is 4a minus 3. Now you're probably wondering, how did I get 4a minus 3? Well, there's 2 different ways you can do it. You can either multiply what's left over that you didn't find a match of, so that's 2 times a, or you could think to yourself, 3a squared times what would equal 12a to the third? Well, I know 3 times 4 equals 12, so that's our coefficient, and a squared times another a would give me a to the third. So there's 2 different ways you could do it, but that's just, whatever way is easier for you. If you're going to do the matching, then you could just do what's left over. If you're not going to do the matching, then you can just think to yourself, what multiplied by what will equal this, and what multiplied by what would equal 9a to the 9a squared. So what's left over for the negative 9a squared is a 3. So 3a squared times negative 3. So that's where that negative plays a part. Remember what I told you, this negative right here? So we have to make sure we have negative 3 here, because negative 3 times 3a squared will give us negative 9a squared. So we're good on that. And then this side, we're just going to copy it down, because there are no GCFs for this. Now, the third step tells you to write the common binomial. So the common binomial, what that means is inside the parentheses here, do you see how they match? That means they're in common. So that's all you do. So you're going to take this 4a minus 3 and you're going to write it down as the left-hand side, because in the end we want to get two binomials multiplying each other. So you're going to take it and you're going to write it down as your left-hand side of your binomial. And then for the right-hand side, it's the last step, which is step 4, is to combine the two GCFs together. Now you noticed for 4a minus 3, there was no GCF for this one. So what we can do, it's kind of our little math trick. You've done it before for slope, and you've probably done it before for other things. We can actually put a 1 in front of that parentheses. I'll make it red so you can see it. We can put a 1 in front of the parentheses right here, and it can stand as our GCF because we don't have one. And 1 times 4a doesn't change the value of 4a, and 1 times negative 3 also doesn't change the value of negative 3. So we're not altering the question in any way, it's just putting that placeholder there to help us answer the question. So the last step here is to combine the two GCFs together. So you notice I drew arrows for you. The 3a squared goes here, and then it's a positive 1. We have to pay attention to whatever symbol was in the middle of the two sides. That goes back here in the middle of the for the two GCFs. So this is a positive 1, so positive 1 goes on this side. Now the way that you can check your answer to make sure you have it correct is just by doing the FOIL method or distribution method. And so we're going to multiply every number by each other. So the first number is going to multiply into this one and into this one, and the second number is going to multiply into this and also multiply into this. So we do 4a times 3a squared, and that gives us 12a to the third, because 4 times 3 is 12, and a times a squared is a to the third. And then negative 4a times 1 will give us 4a, so that's our 4a right here. And then negative 3 times 3a squared, that gives us our 9a squared, our negative 9a squared right here. And our last is negative 3 times 1, which is negative 3. So all four terms match up, and just because they're out of order when you multiply like that does not mean that it's incorrect. It just means that you have to organize it into the greatest exponent first, and then go into descending order. So exponent with the highest degree goes first, and then the next highest, and the next highest, and so on. So the final answer would be 4a minus 3 times 3a squared plus 1. So those are the two binomials, and that's how you factor by grouping. Your answer should be in two binomials at the end, and it started with 4 terms in the beginning. So hopefully this helps you understand how to factor by grouping a little bit better, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.